Hey, Pretentious Engineer here. I know you didn't ask, but I help engineers, global leaders, and entrepreneurs find their way. The journey of an engineer is often disorienting, undefined, and isolating, and I've made it my personal mission to provide greater clarity, a bounded career path, and community to folks like myself, hoping to secure their next best opportunity. After over a decade advancing surgical robotics, device innovation, and VR at Johnson & Johnson, I made a strategic exit to continue my family's journey in Japan. This was one of the most challenging decisions I've ever made in my life. Most folks get stuck in jobs that don't have their best interest in mind, and my flagship course, How to Say Goodbye, will empower you to craft your own strategic exit, targeting an opportunity at a 30% pay increase, living wherever you desire, and loving what you do. I genuinely believe it's possible for you, and my community on Skool is here to support you in your journey. Many colleagues of mine struggled to discern how my wife and I were able to navigate various immigration, housing, financial, and employment risks during our strategic exit in Japan. So I decided to synthesize everything we've learned so you can progress out of that job that's killing you inside. If I can do it, so can you. This course is broken into 3 major movements. The first of which, inertia, illuminates all the constraining forces that keep you in a job that doesn't have your best interests in mind, limiting your future possibilities. The second movement, impact, which we will continue today. Acknowledges an internal choice to break through these inertial forces in pursuit of securing your next. The final movement, momentum, contains the secret sauce of how I exited J&J with my 2 greatest assets intact, my integrity and my network. I'm committed to helping you exit with both so your reputation will prosper, leading to downstream opportunities. So, how will you secure your next? Let's find out together. Ikimashou. Let's go. Prior to my exit from J&J, I gave a TED Talk at my daughter's school, encouraging students to dabble and bet on themselves. Near the end of the talk, I shared that life puts us on peculiar tracks that are going to different places. For instance, in MedTech R&D, there are tracks in engineering, marketing, project management, global leadership, etc. Being able to identify the track you're on is the first step. But you also need to question, is this track taking me somewhere that I actually want to go? Colleagues, friends, family, and bosses can all lock us into tracks that seem best to them, but it's our life that we must lead. It can be disorienting to identify where these tracks cross over and how to move between them, especially in a strategic exit. This leads to hoops. If you imagine a circus, at some point a performer encourages an animal to jump through a hoop. If you want to progress on the track you're on, then just keep jumping through the hoops that are presented to you. But we should also vigilantly search for hoops that lie between the tracks and possibly set a new vision. As we consider how to secure your next, we need to imagine what your future could look like if you bet on yourself and jump tracks. So let me grab my tablet and let's get to work. All right, got a tablet. Let's get to work. So this module is very exciting. I'm breaking off the script now. For those of you who don't know, I script all these videos and read them off a teleprompter so I can try to compress everything. And then this is where we go freeform jazz with it. So this is module 6, okay? And as we've already made the decision that our life's not replaceable, so we're going to exit, and then we started to plan our strategic exit and be navigating risk-based decision making. This next one is going to be based on what our life looks like if we actually bet on ourselves and start to imagine a future state where we're thriving. Because a lot of times when we're in the pot, right, we're soaking in the pot and there's all this bad stuff happening and the temperature's rising and we feel restrained even by golden handcuffs. It's difficult for us to visualize what our true value could be elsewhere and what we could actually be doing and how it could help better humanity and pay us equitably and that we could love it. So what we're going to do is go through a journey of all the, how would I describe it? All the feelings I had to start visualizing of if I started a business, if I jumped from J&J and continued life in Japan, if I bet on myself, what could it look like? So the very first one, let me check my pen color. Blue, excellent. If I bet on myself, I would be able to have continuity of life in Japan. So after living in Japan for 2.5 years, falling in love with the region, providing stability to my kids, I really wanted to imagine that it was possible to continue life there beyond my first employer, Johnson & Johnson, that I could find another company or start my own company legally or become a consultant. There's all these different pathways that would allow me to continue the adventure in Japan. And as we know right now, we're in Chicago. So after 6 months, things didn't pan out. We had a change in plans and we relocated back home to Chicago to reset and restart. But in the future, and we'll get to this on number 6, we imagine, here, I'll just write it. We imagine that someday we'll be able to split live in Tokyo and Chicago. That if our entrepreneurial ventures go well in parallel to traditional employment, if I can moonlight effectively, if things on Skool explode, like there's a possibility we can have a house in Chicago to be proximal to my wife's aging grandparents and a home in Tokyo that we could afford international schooling on our own dime when our kids are there. Like you start to imagine if I bet on myself and build this business and lead everything effectively, like if I win, this is what life could look like. So what's another thing? Well, the second piece that I started to imagine was if I bet on myself, I could build a thriving business. I had to start to believe that after 10 years living within one of the largest healthcare conglomerates in the world, Johnson & Johnson, and seeing all these leaders operate at different levels, and being in the R&D side of things, being in the commercial side of things, the customer facing side of things, that I could probably figure out how to build a business that works. Like I could figure out how to lead people, how to spend money, how to create money. Like these are solvable problems. I could, dig into YouTube and Netflix and not Netflix, YouTube and podcasts and figure it out. Or I could join the Skool games and figure out how all these other communities are successful. Like these are solvable problems. So that was also something I had to start to believe in myself because I had run into so many different walls and lateral moves in my career. No one ever told me, hey, Joe, you could, start your own business and be successful. Like I had to find that internal belief in the exit as I tried to secure my next. All right, third one. This was a really cool one. I have a side story with this. That I could be an entrepreneur. It's always a miracle when I spell that right. And a stay at home dad. And I was just chatting with my wife about this. It's been 6 months since I worked for Johnson & Johnson, and I did entrepreneurship full-time in Tokyo, as well as part full-time in Chicago while looking for jobs in parallel. I have spent so much time with my kids, particularly my newborn son, Akio. Like, I will never get that time back, but I didn't waste it. And at the same time, I was building a business, providing value to different people. And it's something that I desperately want to continue. So even if I go back into industry, setting good boundaries with that as I pursue a global leadership role. But then as I do that in entrepreneurship, imagining that I can go even farther. All right, we got 2 more. The next one, if I bet on myself, I could be a global leader. Now, this sounds so silly, right? Because I was a global leader for 3 years. I directed front-end innovation. You could see my virtual portfolio of my work, right? I think I've shared that at the start of this course. But I hit so many walls where people within J&J wouldn't recognize that or tell me that. I was doing it, but I couldn't be equitably moved into a role that way. As soon as I exited J&J, I got so many offers to go and do other things and to connect with different leaders and lead things globally because I am a global leader. But I had to believe that if I left J&J and bet on myself, that I could actually be the role that was blocked from me within one organization. I could find it in another or craft it my own way as a founder of a startup in Tokyo. All right, and the last one, that I could make a massive impact on my community. We've built a community of around 24,000 followers across TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn. And as I started building a community on Skool during my exit from Johnson & Johnson, I really started to believe that I could find a different sense of purpose, helping engineers, global leaders, and entrepreneurs find their way. For the first 10 years of my career, I was advancing life-saving medical devices, and that's amazing. But I started imagining, like, what if I could inspire and encourage an engineer on any project, whether it's automotive, whether it's military, whether it's medical, all the different spectrums, consumer. What would it look like if people had a sense of deep fulfillment, were being paid equitably, loving what they do? Like, what would that look like? And that got really energizing for me. That spurred on a lot of the work I did to get this community off the ground, to craft this course and, other courses and things that we'll do on Skool. So those for me were kind of my big 6 over the last 6 months. A lot of them were compressed right as I was leaving J&J, and then some of them started to unfold as I entered the startup scene. So I didn't have these all figured out right away, but for you, as you're thinking about like what you want to secure for your next best opportunity, this is a really good exercise because it'll direct you towards, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to find another day job? Do you want to do a hybrid of like entrepreneurship and day job? What industries are of interest? Where do you want to live next? Like, you could start to triangulate a new ikigai. And if you set your timing up correctly and have the right risk mitigations from the last module, you could actually build towards the next that you desire and live the life you want. Like, you don't have to be strung along in your career forever by other people's decisions. You don't have to have people push you down one track, right? So let's get into praxis so you can get into the meat of the application. So the first one, is there a particular bet that, I love this question, intimidates you? Out of all 6 of these bullet points that you end up brainstorming, like, which one makes you nervous? Like, you feel like, nah, that can't be me. That's somebody else's life. That's the one you should probably start to like dig into a little bit, because if you start to unpack it and seek counsel around it and kind of find that essence of yourself in it, that's probably the one you want. But it's also the one you're probably self-excluding yourself from for various reasons, whether it's how you've been socialized, something you experienced in your career, you were burned, right? And if nobody's willing to kind of speak life into that for you, that's what I'm doing right now, to lean into the one that intimidates you. Like, for me, the big one on here that gave me that kind of sense of intimidation, it's not even continued life in Japan or the split live. I think for me, it's this idea of, it's really these 3. That I could be an entrepreneur, I could be a present stay-at-home father, I am a global leader, even though I have a master's in global leadership and did it for J&J for 3 years, that for some reason I still self-exclude myself from that skill set. And that finally I can make a massive impact for my community. That, even though I might think this will grow to 50 people or 100 people, like, this community can explode and start changing lives, and that it can just become this amazing machine. So those are kind of my big 3 that I'm leaning to in this next season. All right, next one. What would you regret most if you didn't bet on yourself? This was a huge one for conversations with me and my wife. Like, one of the turning points of I'm going to quit was, I was like, what if we were able to live moderately, secure our own housing, get a job a couple weeks or months after this J&J thing, and we actually figure out how to do this. Like, we figure out how to like raise our kids in Japan. And what if we just followed the J&J path back to a job that didn't serve us in New Jersey and pushed us even farther from family? Like, I would regret that so much. So that sense of potential regret actually pushed us towards a galvanizing decision of, let's go for it. We have to go for it. We only have this shot today, right? What if the boomerang never comes and we had an opportunity to continue life here? So that, it's a little bit of FOMO, but I think it's helpful for you to really think about that, because there's a shot you're not taking, a bet you're not making on yourself. And if you use the regret framework, it might help you uncover, like, but if I don't, I would feel terrible. Like, if it could have worked, if I could have built a thriving business, by working on my Moonlight Mondays, I would regret that so much in 5 years, so I should do it. All right. And then the last one. What actions can you take to improve the chances of securing your next? Yeah. And this is more than grind. Okay, grinding's going to be part of this. Like, you're going to have to put in work to polish a resume, to make a virtual portfolio. If you follow the next course that I have laid out for you on how to land a job, like, a big part of that is taking the time to create a virtual portfolio of your work, or trying to get on a podcast or something like that to establish credibility, building connections and relationships so you can secure your next best opportunity. Like, if you're not taking those actions, then you're not going to have the opportunities. So there's something you have to do to improve your chances of securing that centered ikigai. No one's going to hand you a centered, purposeful life. Like, you have to actively craft it. It might be mentorship, it might be joining a mastermind. There's all kinds of different actions you can take to improve the probability of success. But if you don't start, you're going to stay in that pot forever and wake up in 10 years and be like, shoot. Or in 2 years, you're impacted by a layoff, and then you're scrambling and compromising into your next role. So that's my encouragement to you. Bet on yourself. You're worth it. I believe in you 100%. And I'm so excited for us to start the third leg of this journey, the third movement, which is momentum, because I really want to share some of the secret sauce of how I did my exit well, because there's a lot of principles you can apply to have your network fully intact, which creates downstream opportunities, and your integrity. Like, for you to feel like you're leaving as a whole person, because there's always a part of this process that makes us feel small as we move into the next journey and put the open to work label on our LinkedIn circle. All right, see you on the next one. Keep changing the world. And yeah, you can sip on that.